Greetings, YouTubers, and I guess people just viewing YouTube. I guess in this video, I'm going to talk about why I became an atheist a few years ago. Well, it basically started like back when I was like 11 or 12. Probably even actually just even younger than that. I think it's just one of those things that just your mind just triggers you to just thinking outside the box and just realizing reality and fantasy and just being able to have that ability to mix the two together and try not to merge them. But I guess one of the early, I don't know. For example, when I was younger, at first the excuse was that. Well, hey, why do I, it's the weekend, why do I have to go to bed at a certain time on a Saturday night to get up 2 hours later than I usually would on Monday through Friday on a Sunday morning? And, just why, how can we never cover every verse, every book in the Bible? How come we only talk about the same 6 verses every year? And we don't really, and it just jumps around from story to story, and it doesn't really tell the whole picture. It's just one portion of a greater portion of a huge book that has 66 books inside of it. How come we're not touching on all of those? And for some reason, nobody could really find me an answer for that. But I guess one of the few reasons, which is a silly one at that, but I always missed a lot of good TV shows when I was going to church, even at even the night service, or even the Wednesday or Thursday night service. There was a lot of good TV shows that was out there, in my opinion, and I just didn't feel like, it was like the episode of Everybody Loves Raymond. So like the next time you go to church, just ask God, why did he have church and football go on at the same time? I was just like, I don't know why, that just always clicked with me, like, yeah, if all these great shows are going on, why do I have to go to church and just hear about the same thing over and over when I can just watch this new interesting episode that's coming on? And then at one point I felt bad about said thought and tried to become, I guess, a super Christian at that point. This is like when I was like 10 or 11 or 12. And then that only lasted that probably only lasted like 3 months, because I just kind of realized that I was trying to be better than the people around me, which didn't really make me feel right inside. And B, how could I say I was this high of a person, i.e. a super Christian, if all my time is not spent doing anything, it's all spent just praising Jesus? How does that really affect anything or anybody for what, I guess, position I would be if all I'm doing is just worshiping somebody I never see, and somebody I don't know the whole story of, let alone that. And then that just kind of, I guess that kind of started me, that was me starting to notice the hypocrisy a little bit, but I guess not enough completely to leave the faith completely, or let alone stop calling myself a Christian. But I guess the next few years after that, from age 12 to basically the beginning of senior year. So basically for like the next 6 years, I was kind of struggling with myself, just trying to think of ways to, I guess, kind of prove God as opposed to just other things. And obviously this didn't really work out at all. One thing just jumped to another. Especially sophomore year, just years later, when they decided to talk about evolution. And I never had a problem with that. I just felt the need not to tell my dad about it. And my dad and I guess his church is one of the reasons why I kind of left, because I'm definitely one of those kids that kind of grew up without a father figure, or without their own father as a father figure. And again, here I guess at the end of freshman year in 2009, I was given the choice to live with him. Little did I know that this is all part of his plan that he was having since I was 12 years old. Not knowing the whole thing that was going on in my mind or not, or maybe he did, but I can't really remember completely. I just remember at age 12, my sister and I met him for the first time in years, and apparently I was 12 then, and since that first meeting, he's always had the desire to have me under his palm. And he was way more dedicated to being a servant to not even God, just a servant to somebody that claimed they had a connection to God, and just basically abide by that person's rules and all that, and he just forgot about being a good father and just a father in general. I was never really a son to him at that point. I was just really more of a mini-me or a Boba Fett and him being Jango. Really more of the latter one than anything, because I never really understood what his obsession was with Jango Fett and Boba Fett until I made that connection that he sees me as his Boba Fett, which doesn't help that our high school pictures look exactly alike from each other. So he basically saw me as his, successor after him, and I just never really liked that. And again, that kind of makes me wonder if he knew where I was, what state of mind I was thinking back when I was 12 years old, and that's why he wanted me to have me under his wing since then, so I wouldn't go down that path, I guess. But no, the whole thing was just a cult. It was just again, like, they forgot at some points that us kids, and eventually I was the only person, that we were kids, let alone still in school, and they expected us to have good grades. But yet, every time, the second we got off school, we had to immediately help them out with their needs, to the point that it would be like 1 o'clock in the morning, you're just now getting home, go to sleep, and you got to get up 5 hours later to go to work, to go to school. Just the whole method again of having to get up just as early as going to school to go to church, being gone at church all day, all Sunday, not even knowing if you're even going to be back home or not, and or let alone how late you're going to be home. And again, it was just the same verses over and over. It was like every church, no matter how different they try to be or how much they were not really a church and more of a cult, which that kind of made me feel like all churches and all of the Christianity faith is somewhat of a cult. It just kind of triggered my thought to where I was just like, I just didn't like it. But the thing that really got me to switch was just me asking God, like, okay, if you are actually real, because this is like 2.5 years later after I lived with my dad, and it got bad after the first few months, but I was like 16, 17 at the time, so he kept on telling me that I'd be a failure if I moved back to Kentucky. At one point he told me I didn't even have a choice to move back. I wasn't allowed to go. At some points he was making it seem like he was being very gracious to me for letting me visit my own mother and my own sister for just a week for winter break or for fall break or spring break, or even just 2 weeks in the summer. He made it all seem like he was doing this as the greatest father in the world, and he even went as far as one of the things that got me to really leave him was, well, that's just veering off, but he wasn't a good father. He was really more of a servant than anything, and he expected me to be the same servant, especially since everybody around him kept telling him that I should not be acting the way I was. I should be more like him, and should be more like the people. And I was, this is just 2.5 years later. Like, all my other friends that were part of the church ended up leaving, but I still had to go to school with them. So I was alone at church, having to be the only kid, having to do all the other kid responsibilities for a good year and a half, or just a little over a good year and a few months at that. But that whole time I was just contemplating suicide. My psychiatric wasn't where it should have been, and I'm pretty sure that showed in school a lot. But I just eventually asked God, because I was so tired of all that. I was like, okay, if you are real, get me out of this mess. Like, this doesn't feel right. This isn't right. Just get me out of this. Eventually, it took me months to conflict that, because again, it still wasn't me. It was still me trying to think I was a Christian and all that, because it was just, I was feeling like, well, because everybody kept telling me, well, God doesn't make your path easy, He makes it a living hell for you. And for a time I thought that's what my whole living with my dad was, but eventually I just was like, no, it's not. I don't like this one bit. Get me out of here. Months went by, nothing happened, and eventually other people started leaving the program that were there for decades. And I just kind of realized that I needed to be the next one. I couldn't just let people keep going on around me. I was almost turning 18, therefore I was starting to be seen as an adult. for at least the cult reasons, not for responsibility reasons. They thought I was never going to be ready for the world unless I was under their wing for the rest of my life, like they treated this other guy who was in his 30s, who was twice the age I was, and aside from being handy and all that, I don't think, and knowing how to, and he's just smart enough to know bills, they just weighed him down and used him for his wits and just chastised him the second he always disappointed them. It just kept on treating him like the kid of the group because he was just the youngest one, and he was a kid, and he was the son of one of the other church members who eventually left. But at that point, I just realized I couldn't go down that path. I had to be the next one to leave. Eventually, I ended up calling my second uncle, and I knew he lived in Grand Rapids at the time, which was only 45 minutes away from where I was living. And I just asked him if I could just spend the rest of the year of high school with him, graduate, and then just move down to Kentucky afterwards. Just to kind of reunite with my family down there at the time. Again, not knowing how savage they were either. But I asked him that, and he said, yeah, sure, hold on. Next thing you know, like within an hour, he tells his wife used to actually be part of the church as well, like years ago. She tells one of the kids that did leave a year before I did, and the kid tells her father, and her father, who just left the program around the same time her kid did, still worked with my dad. So he contacted my dad, and within the hour, my dad knew that I had called my second uncle to move out. And by that point, he had called his, cult leader and her assistant over, and basically told me that they were there to hold him down from trying to attack me, which he didn't just say that as a verbal threat. He actually did almost attack me at one point. Actually, maybe almost twice. At one point, they actually had to call one of the people over to stay overnight to make sure nothing happened to me. Because at this point, my dad was in the garage banging on wood, and you could hear it from my bedroom. But I just had to get out of that. The cult leader told me that my life would be a living hell afterwards. But that night I ended up having to pack. The next morning I went to Kentucky, didn't even go to school that day. And we rode from South Haven, where I was living at the time, to Benton Harbor, which usually isn't that long of a drive, but I think he kind of took his time driving. So the whole time it just felt awkward for me, feeling like this 1 minute equals 3 minutes long drive of just watching him, making sure he doesn't do anything. We eventually get there. He drops me off. I had to pay the bus fare out of my own pocket. And on the way there, he just started to talk to me, saying that I don't care, that I didn't, I admitted that I didn't really know what damage I did, mainly because I didn't know their way of thinking completely, even though I was there for 2.5 years. But at one point, my dad said, "I bet you don't even believe in God." And I just silently agree with him, and that's right there. That's when I realized that just accumulating everything that I just said in this video, up to that point in my life, I just accumulated all of that, and I just realized, no, I don't believe in God. I just, and then going back to the whole evolution thing in sophomore year, just that also kind of triggered me as well. That's kind of what made me start questioning God. Not enough for me to say I was agnostic at the time or anything, but just the fact that I was able to see, all these facts happen, and just proof that all this did happen, and that there was records and times and everything that showed when all this was discovered and found out, and just how it all links together. I was seeing facts right in front of me, so I had to believe in evolution, especially since a friend at lunch told me that scientists did in fact prove evolution, and I'm looking at this and I'm like, he's not wrong. And that really made me not believe in the whole creation story, and therefore, if I didn't believe in the whole creation story, I couldn't believe the rest of the story, seeing as how the creation is the beginning. And so, fast forward back to where he's telling me that, and I'm agreeing with him. As soon as we part ways, and as soon as I never got on the bus because my family relatives, the same ones that almost got me attacked, because they couldn't just keep it to themselves or anything, decided to tell other members where I was at, picked me up. So I never got a refund on my bus ticket, and they never really paid me back for that. They just kept telling me straight up that them finding me before I went on a bus ride, even though the bus ride was going to take me to Louisville, Kentucky, which was, again, 45 minutes away from where my mom lived, they kept telling me that it was a miracle. And, for months they kept telling me that. They said, I don't say, think what you want, but that was a miracle. I'm just like, no, it wasn't. And I think the reason why they said think what you want is because, again, as soon as I got away from it, as soon as the relatives picked me up, I got onto a computer, got on the internet as quickly as I could, and just changed my Facebook status to atheist. And that whole time I had a Facebook back in November 2010, I never felt, and this is still sophomore year, no, this is junior year now, and I never felt the need to put down Christian as my religious view. I just didn't feel like that was right for me. But February 14th, 2012, a week after my 18th birthday, the day that my dad dropped me off and I last saw his face again, it was also, I think, one of the last times I saw the face of the relatives that picked me up. I put down that I was an atheist, and since then I've just never regretted it. I mean, I could see the bullshit now of just religion and faith and all that, and I just don't understand why people will just ignore the science and everything around it and just believe the same thing over and over, especially since most of them don't really read the Bible, let alone it feels like hardly anybody reads the whole Bible from beginning to end. That still never really dawns on me. And it's to the point now to where when people are trying to stand up on a soapbox and try to preach staring at a subway on a Friday afternoon, I'm just going to ask him if it's Sunday. Like if it was Sunday or anything yet, and he gets offended, obviously I'm sitting down because I know he's going to want to talk to me afterwards, and he does, and he just tells me, he does everything but give me a card or a flyer to the church or to the next church program, but he quotes John 3:16, he tells me evolution is just as believable as an iPhone 7 popping up out of nowhere on a table, that he could create life by just shaking a jar of sand. Just every cliche thing that a religious person says, even saying that they aren't a religious person. He said it all. And I just couldn't help but laugh my ass off as soon as he walked out the door. And that just happened just recently, so all that just kind of reassured me that I was definitely making a mature choice, to the point that for the last month that I did go to church, and eventually I just decided not to go, to where I haven't gone really since 2012. And it wasn't really more because I still believed or anything. It was just really more, they actually had food, and decent food, and at the breakfast seminar, and I think I just went there for the food, and because everybody else in the family went there, so I was like, okay, fuck it. And eventually that just kind of died out on me, to where I just stopped going. But I think that was kind of a mutual agreement between my family and me, because I couldn't help but make smart-ass comments every time the preacher was talking. And that would cause my sisters and their friends to get pissed off at me. So I eventually just ended up not going to church, and my family really never accepted that. For some reason, they blamed drugs as the reason, even though I didn't really start participating in doing drugs, which was really just pot, which doesn't really count as drugs. But they never really forgave me for being an atheist, let alone they never really forgave me for being for going down the path that I did go down, and the path that I am at now. But anyway, I kind of trailed off here and there every now and then, but I feel like the story was somewhat necessary. But that's my story of me coming out as an atheist. I just don't believe in that. I believe in evolution and facts. And like any other atheist would say, I've yet to see that anywhere on most Bible stories. Yes, I know Jesus was a real person, but no, he wasn't the Son of God, in my opinion. I feel like that's one of the few things Jews actually have right. I think it's kind of bullshit and just ass backwards how a lot of religions are a lot alike, and they have the same identical origins with one another, but yet they're willing to fight each other and kill each other for the right religion, instead of just realize that maybe it all branched from one state of mind, and that maybe they're just taking these written gospels and these written stories that were interpreted for centuries, which means that they aren't the original information, but they rather take those to heart and say those are the real words, instead of seeing that they're the same words as their neighbors next to them, and just fight against each other. it just doesn't make sense, the fact that it's just pushed back technology for thousands of years as well. I just kind of see religion as something that was useful for a time in mankind, but now that it's the 21st century, the fact that we just now had to legalize gay marriage is just beyond ridiculous for me. To the fact that people are making creationist museums and telling people not to teach evolution in school and that they should teach the Bible in school. It just all seems very stupid in my opinion, and I just don't really like it. I know that sounds childish the way I just said that, but there's really no other way I can say it. It's ridiculous. I don't believe in it. I'm so glad I decided to become an atheist a few years ago. I kind of wish I almost wish I did sooner, but I never really would have learned all the reasons why I should have been an atheist in the first place. But yeah, that's my story of me coming out as an atheist. Hopefully this triggers other closeted atheists to come out as well. And to all the other people that have came out, or just any other atheist that does end up seeing this video, hopefully it doesn't end up pissing you off or offending you or just getting, I guess, mad at me for some reason. And if anything, I hope anybody just enjoys this video and just takes it as is. With that being said, peace out and have a good one, everybody.